It was their hands that reminded me of what happened there. In 2005, I was sitting in a restaurant with my friend Rachel in Rwanda's capital, Kigali. I found myself staring across the room at two deaf men using their hands to talk to one another. I loved watching hands tell stories. I had studied American Sign Language in college to meet Washo, the first chimpanzee to acquire a human language. Washo greeted me like she did many new visitors by smacking the thumbs of her two fists together, signing that she wanted to see my shoes. I looked at her hands and then looked at mine. Rwanda is home to chimpanzees, 13 species of monkeys, and the famous mountain gorillas in the mist. To see them in their natural environment on their terms was partly why I was there. I had spent the previous several years seeking opportunities to volunteer at primate rehabilitation sanctuaries as an escape from my engineering day jobs. Why, people would ask. Maybe it was because Moja, another chimpanzee in Washo's surrogate family, would cross her arms over her chest and sign hug love, or that I played chase with Kiki Jackson in a sanctuary in Cameroon, and when we got tired, he presented his arm for grooming, and I pretended to eat the imaginary bugs I'd find. Or maybe it was because I held and bottle-fed the babies, and right before equatorial sundown, when I bathed with just a few precious drops of sun-warmed rainwater, I could still feel where their tiny hands and opposable toes latched onto my body. It was the first time in my life I felt like a mother, but knew I could never replace the ones that they had lost. Meeting them was a reminder of their histories, but also a chance to see them start new lives. For some, though, it was harder than others. I'm reminded by a chimpanzee I met in a sanctuary in Montreal the year before. She would spin her head into figure eights. Previously used in hepatitis research, she had lived alone in a cage for 11 years, was chemically knocked down with a dart gun numerous times, hundreds of times, and had anxiety attacks. And though she is now in sanctuary and her laboratory days are long over, she still spins her head in figure eights. Part of the reason I went to Rwanda was to see free-living apes who had never known the losses associated with captivity. But there was something else there, too. In 1994, roughly on the same soil we stood, 1 million people were slaughtered in the course of 100 days. I had read about Rwanda's genocide on my daily commute to my engineering job. I was going through this phase of only reading books about human violence, and my friends would ask, "Don't you read anything fun?" I was the definite buzzkill at parties. As an engineer, I studied catastrophes, earthquakes, landslides. I was interested in how the earth responded to human pressures. A year before this trip, I was working on a Superfund cleanup project in New Jersey, but calling my project a cleanup wasn't quite right. We were dealing with thorium, and radioactive materials aren't something you clean. They exponentially decay, and the plan was just to relocate the contaminated soil, truck it to Utah. Rwanda had 8 million people, the population of New York City. What did it mean to have that population decimated? What was the half-life of the traumas of a genocide? Shortly after we arrived in Rwanda, we were in this church in Ntarama, and we met a man named Pacifique. He had a scar on the top of his head, and he pointed there and simply said, "They slashed." Left for dead, he survived, but the rest of his family were slain in this church among 5,000 others, which is now a memorial. It is not a memorial of sculpture and stone. It's one of wood and bone. The fragments of the personal items of the victims were just thrown about the floor. There was rosaries, scarves, hats, little girls' shoes. Their bones had been sorted and stacked. Reassembled skulls lined rows and rows of shelves. There were small skulls, those of children. In the room adjacent to the school, adjacent to the church, there was a school. On a desk lay a child's notebook. Pages and pages and pages of the cursive of tiny hands flapped in the wind. A few days later, we were in Virunga National Park, home of roughly half of the world's remaining mountain gorillas. We had spent the morning with a new group, Amahoro, which means peace in Kinyarwanda. And it had a silverback named Ubumwe, meaning unity, and a recent young addition to the family named Rwanda. So Rwanda is in peace, led by unity. And to some extent, Rwanda had been moving in that direction. There were signs of a nation rebuilding everywhere, but there were also reminders. Their hands reminded me. I'm back in that restaurant in Kigali staring at those two men's hands. Another man comes to our table attempting to translate, saying his mother and brother are deaf. I had asked if they too lived around here. In 3 words, everything would change. No, dead, genocide. 2 pairs of hands signing, 2 pairs of hands silenced. I am not a psychologist or a primatologist. What I know about resilience and resistance, I know from studying soils. When loaded too quickly, they collapse. And even after heavy loads are removed, the memories of previous burdens remain in each grain of clay. Over time, soils do gain strength from withstanding such pressures. I think about these things as an engineer, as a human being, as a primate, and I wonder how we go forward reconciling the damage that we've done to the planet, to each other, to other beings. And I know in engineering, to build, to rebuild, first we probe, we drill holes, we unearth fragments of information that compiled give us a sense of what it was like in situ, in place. And I think to move forward, we need to continue to make those linkages to connect the dots. Thank you.